I know you're gonna dig this.
This is Rhine McLin, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles, recorded live here at DATV Studios in Dayton, Ohio. Now zooming in all the way from San Diego, California, Tris Imboden, drummer, producer, songwriter. As a performer, he has been in studio sessions and on tour with some of the most notable and highest-selling musicians of all time. He was the drummer for the multi-platinum band Chicago from 1990 to 2018. He is a multi-platinum selling artist. Welcome, and thank you for agreeing to come on our show. Hi!
Hi, Ryan. Well, I am so happy to be here with you.
This is just so exciting. When I was doing my research on you, it's like, okay, here's another book on another Chicago artist. And all the interesting things there are to note. So I'm going to just start off because this is such an honor to have someone who has been with Chicago for so many years and to have such a extending career in the music business. That let's just start back to that parade that your daddy took you to.
Oh, that's great. You know your stuff, right? Yeah, I think I was about 5 or 6 years old, and my dad had taken to me as I remember, a 4th of July parade. And I believe it was in Huntington Beach. And I'll never forget the moment when this drum section went marching by. And man, I didn't know, my heart about leapt out of my throat. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I had never been moved so deeply in all my great 5 or 6 years of living in my life. And I knew then, though, that I was going to have to do that in my life.
You know, that is so, it is moving because sometimes in our lives, you know, we bump along for a long time and we never know what we're going to do. And then you have that epiphany and you say, you know, this is me. And here you are, 5 years old, decided this is me, and I am going to follow this career. So tell me about your formal training that it began in grade school. Tell me about that.
Well, actually, yeah, I started in the junior high school band. I wanted to play drums, of course, but everybody wanted to play drums. And so the drum section was all taken up. And so I had to settle for playing trumpet. For about a year, and I was pretty good at it. Actually, I got to second chair. Actually, I was playing second chair trumpet, but the band director knew that I really, really wanted to play drums, and all the guys in the drum section knew it, and they were kind of working the band director to, hey, get Tris in here, you know, because I could kind of play already. I was, beating on pots and pans since I was a kid, and I was still a kid, but I advanced a little, So then I learned how to read music then in junior high school. And by the time I was in high school, I was already doing gigs. We were playing pizza parlors and stuff like that. But I was getting paid. And I was going, wow, man. And this is pretty cool.
Well, you
And
know,
so all through high school, I didn't really play in the school band or anything.
well, you know what really is interesting about your career is that you've shown that you always like to live around water, and
Yeah.
that you are an avid surfer, and so therefore your surfing and your band playing were really kind of connected, weren't they?
Well, they were early on,
Yeah.
and here in Southern California, and in like 1961 and 62, around that time, I had my ear glued to the radio. But the stuff that was popular at the beach was surf music, which was primarily instrumental. Bands like the Ventures and the Challengers and bands like that. But I had my ear glued to the radio, and I was listening to everything. And trying to play everything too, playing along with stuff, records that my folks had and that. So,
it shows that under your soundtrack with the surf movie, 5 Summer Stories.
Yes. Now that turned out to be a real fortuitous thing. When I graduated from high school in 1969, I had met a couple of guys who were playing in this pretty famous band. I mean, they'd been on TV and had, records on the radio and all. And the band had broken up and was going to start a new band. And they'd seen me play and asked me to play along with them. And I was kind of the young guy and kind of green, and I'd never recorded or done anything like that. But anyway, I said, sure, I was wondering whether I should be going to college, it was like college, but these guys already had a record deal. So I was going, record deal, college, yeah, record deal, I'm going to do that, And so anyway, we were asked, even though we weren't a surf band, that was well beyond the surf band era, to do the soundtrack for this movie that just blew up, man. It was the largest box office selling gross of any 16 millimeter to that time, 5 Summer Stories. And we ended up having a #1 record in Hawaii. And that was really Honk. We ended up opening for Chicago and Santana and for Loggins and Messina and for all these big bands, and got to tour a little bit with the Beach Boys and that. And so that was really where I cut my teeth recording wise, and that was with that band.
When you're cutting your teeth in something like what you've just explained, what does that entail?
Well, Ryan, being in the studio is a totally different canvas than playing live. Playing live, you have the audience and you, and there's a synergy that happens between the audience and you. I mean, if you're getting to them, they're showing you, and then it just creates this great energy exchange. With the studio, you're really under the microscope, and everything you play is exaggerated and on the wide screen, as we say, and so it's a real adjustment to learn how to play maybe a bit more simply and precisely and all that, particularly on the drums, because it's the backbone, that and the bass of everything, So anyway, I with Honk, I got my feet more than wet with that, because we did quite a bit of recording. We had a publishing deal with a company that let us use their studio. So
now Honk. Yeah. Now what group was Honk?
Honk. That was the band that did the soundtrack for 5 Summer Stories.
Now, how did they get that name? How did they get that name, Honk?
Oh man, it was just a goofy name. It was just, how band guys sit around and kick around names and that, and make each other laugh and that. Well, back then there was like all these bumper stickers, honk if you love Jesus, and honk this and honk that. And so I think that's where we got it from, and it was certainly easy to remember.
Yeah, it was. One of the things that you were saying, and I was talking to another friend of yours, and because you are a drummer, it says the drummer gives the singer the inspiration, and the singer is inspired, and the crowd is inspired by the singer. So it's the drummer who inspires the singer.
Oh, man. Well,
and you
I
know,
tell you, if I've been able to do that, apparently I have.
and I tell you,
I've succeeded in my job.
And I'll tell you who told me that, and it was Bill Chaplin.
Oh man, Bill,
Yes,
God, I love that
that
man
was
so
what Bill
much.
said, that was the drummer's job, was to inspire the singer, to inspire the audience.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. Ah,
So I just
well,
wanted to share that with you, because I said I held on to that little nugget in my head so that I could share that with you as you being a professional drummer.
oh man, well, I'm gonna have to thank him, and yeah, I tell you what, he is one of the finest I've ever worked with. I have to say, though, the reverse can be true. I was with Al Jarreau for 4 years, and Al Jarreau, as you probably know, he had like an orchestra in his throat.
Yes.
You know, and then he would do a drum solo, and he would kick my butt every time, man. We would exchange fours, as they say, you know, and man, talk about inspiring. That guy, man, unbelievable, just unbelievable. And he would do that with the flute solo too, you know. I mean, he was just so amazing and so inspired. Bill did a lot of work with Al Jarreau too. Yeah. Wrote songs for him and sang. Yeah.
You know, the one thing I really enjoy about you professional artists is that how you are so complimentary of one another, and our nation could learn a lot from that. So no matter what's going on, you know, you look for the positives on each person and you highlight those. And this is a time that where music is so important in inspiring us to be a civil nation. And so that's my little band. I just got off my little bandwagon there. And so, you know, as you were talking, how long did Honk last?
Well, we were together from about 1970 till about 1976. And at that time, when the band broke up, even though we hadn't met with national success or worldwide, whatever, we'd gotten the attention of some producers and a lot of musicians, a lot of people in the business. So I was living in Laguna Beach then, and I moved up to LA and started breaking into the session scene, you know. I was recording with an English artist named Ian Matthews, and had done a couple of albums with him, and was getting ready to go on the road with him when I heard about these auditions with Kenny Loggins, whom I loved, you know, Loggins and Messina. But then I heard about this new album called Celebrate Me Home that he'd recorded, that Bob James had produced with Phil Ramone, and that they were looking for a drummer. And I really didn't think, Ryan, that I had a chance, because I'd heard all the guys that were going up there to audition. They were all my heroes, you know, and I thought, you know, I'm not going to get this gig, so I'm going to just go play it so I can hear the music. Well, I heard the music. It was unbelievable. It was really groundbreaking. And two of my favorite drummers were the drummers on that album, Harvey Mason and Steve Gadd. And anyway, I heard this music and was just going, wouldn't it be great to play with this guy? But I was supposed to go on the road in 2 weeks with Ian Matthews, and I didn't want to, if I did get the gig, tell Ian Matthews. You know, man, I can't play in your band, I know, you know, so, but anyway, they kept calling me back, and sure enough, I got the call from Kenny Loggins, and said, "You want to join a rock and roll band?" I said, "Okay, man, put me in, coach." And then the rest for me was history, because I did the next album after that, you know, Like I actually got to play on all of his hits, his big hits. This Is It, Heart to Heart, I'm All Right from the movie Caddyshack, Footloose. You know, This Is It and Heart to Heart were actually R&B crossover hits too. He'd written with Micheal McDonald, those two. And so anyway, that caught the ear of a lot of other people. And so I was working from then on.
But now, so what happened with Ian Matthews?
Oh, Ian Matthews. Well, he went on. He had a hit record after I'd left, and then Ian went and actually became, I think, in the A&R department, an A&R man for a record company. I think it was Island Records, actually, and so he kind of slowed down his performing, not immediately, but eventually.
But I've heard nothing but compliments about Kenny Loggins as a not only as a vocalist but as a musician, and
Yes.
that the experience that folks have been able to have with Kenny Loggins has really been life-changing in their musical careers. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that, and I learned so much from him, and not only that, but he was so demanding as a musician, and loves the drums, and used to love to push me to come up with different kind of approaches to a pop record or to a song. You know, he didn't want it to be a standard drum part. So on songs like This Is It, you know, it's, you're too young to remember that
No,
song.
I'm not.
But,
I wish, but no, I'm not.
oh, well, anyway, I borrowed heavily from Steve Gadd for the intro of that, but it's not something you would hear on a pop record, you know, in my approach. And he and I would work together sometimes on drum parts, and then it got to the point where he would just throw an idea to me and then let me take it and develop it. And like the whole breakdown in Footloose, the drum breakdown, you know, that was me, you know, and he collaborating. He said, you know, I want this, you know, kind of New Orleans kind of semi-Bo Diddley thing, but you come up with something. So he trusted me to do that.
You know, one of the things that I've heard about Kenny Loggins is that Kenny did not want the standard music genre. Every time that he did something, he wanted to push it and change it so that he wouldn't be put into a box. And you know, and I think that's a gift of a musician such as one like yourself.
Oh, well, thank you. I feel so blessed, Ryan, because all too often in the music business, people want to put you in a box and say, okay, he's a good funk drummer. Okay, he's a good jazz drummer, or he's a rock drummer, or, you know, just categorize you somehow. And I am so blessed. I feel so blessed because I was able to kind of blur those lines and sneak around and, you know, play some jazz, you know, with Al Jarreau and Stanley Clarke and David Sanborn and George Duke and like that. But at the same time, I got to play rock and roll with, you know, with Kenny Loggins and so many other people. And man, you know, I got to go on the road with Chaka Khan, one of my all-time favorite singers.
I'm sure going on the road with Chaka Khan was truly a treat.
It really was. It really was, yeah. Yes.
And you know, the other thing is like when we talk about Al Jarreau, they tried to classify him in a category, but he was so talented that he could go in several directions, and that's, you know, and it seems like most of the people that you've been able to get your experience with could do that. And
Yes.
that crossover, or as you called it, the blurred lines, that the music genre, that is so important in a musical career that you don't get pinpointed. And I think some of your best musicians are the ones that are able to cross over in those different areas. So their opportunities are larger when they're like that too, don't you think?
That's absolutely the truth, Ryan. Yes. The more genres that you can play, the more styles and that, absolutely, the more opportunities potentially you will have. And gratefully that worked out for me because I love all music. I mean, I love all kinds, so many different types and they all, it's all music and all touches our hearts in only a way that music can. And no other art form, to me anyway, does it quite like that. Music just speaks to those recesses in us that only music can get to.
And yeah, right. And just like you've had the opportunity to do some work with Neil Diamond, and Neil Diamond's a hardworking hardworking artist. You ever go to one of his concerts? You just like, okay, Neil, that's enough. I've had I believe that you will sing every song that you know to me. And
that's the truth. I went to see him.
Oh my goodness.
It was. I recorded a little bit on an album that David Foster was producing, and I couldn't believe the show. It was. I mean, it must have been 3.5 hours long.
I was going to say when I went to see him, it was 3 hours. I was like, okay, Neil, that I've gotten my money's worth. I got some money in the bank with you.
Absolutely.
But I mean, and those type of performers now, they're far and in between. But the Neil, if you go to a Neil Diamond show in his heyday, I mean, you be prepared.
You better pack a lunch.
Or dinner. Or maybe breakfast too.
That's right, and dinner. Yeah.
And the thing was, you know what was so exciting about him? He enjoyed it. You could see whether you were tired or not. He just enjoyed what he was doing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's so true. And don't be going anywhere. I'm not done yet. Right?
He reminds you of the preacher that calls your name out when you're trying to leave early.
Right.
He says, Tris, I'm not done.
Right.
But and just think about the experience that you've had. You've had the experience with the Beach Boys, Earth, Wind and Fire, the Doobie Brothers. I mean, when you talk about a cross section of individuals that you've had an opportunity to play with, from Anita Baker to Julio Iglesias and Stevie Wonder, Firefall, Steve Vai, is that his name, Vai?
Steve Vai, yeah,
okay.
He's a great guitarist, phenomenal. Yeah,
Richard Marx, Richard Marx, and I look at all of this, and then I think about when you had an opportunity. I always enjoyed Peter Cetera when he was with Chicago.
Oh, me too.
So tell me about being with Chicago. I mean, how did you get to Chicago?
Okay. Well, it's so funny. I got to tell a little story about what Chicago meant to me, first of all. I remember being 16 and going to the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles and going to see this band Procol Harum from England that I really liked. And anyway, this unknown band was playing on this stage. It wasn't even on the main stage. And I walked in and went, oh my God, who are these guys? I've never heard anything like this. There was 3 horns and this bass player was singing and playing so great, and this guitar player, unbelievable. The drummer was on fire and the keyboard player. And I kept trying to ask people, who are these guys? And finally somebody said, I think they're called Chicago Transit Authority, CTA or something. And I'm like, wow, man. And so a year later, there was no recordings at that point. Their first album came out. And man, it made such an impact, like on the world. I mean, but certainly me. And I knew when I heard those guys that night that they were destined for greatness, you know. And if somebody had said, you know, Trish, you're going to be the drummer of that band someday, I would have went, yeah, right. And I'm Napoleon. I wouldn't have believed it. So fast forward all these years, and Bill Champlin that you mentioned, I'd done a lot of work with in the studio. And in fact, Honk had done shows together with his band, Sons of Champlin.
When you talk about Bill, you know, Bill really likes studio work. You know, Bill kind of reminds me of a Neil Diamond in the studio, you know?
Absolutely, man. Bill has worked with just about everybody you can name, and multiple times too, because he's so great. In fact, he was I know considered the go-to vocal arranger, background vocals for everybody, man, and over all the whole spectrum of music too. Well, anyway, he had been with Chicago for a number of years, 8 years, 10 years by the time Danny Seraphin left, the original drummer, which was 1990. And I believe Bill had been with the band since 82, I think, or thereabouts. And so it was he that brought my name up and that I owe the debt of gratitude to for joining Chicago. And man, it just fit like a glove. The first rehearsal, you know, they gave me a tape, and I went into the woodshed and learned everything, and it just fit so well. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, all these years later, from being 16 and hearing them and going, oh man, are these guys? So all of a sudden, I'm in the band. You know, I mean, it took a number of years. I was almost 40.
Really? When you got to Chicago?
Yeah, I was 38, I think, when I joined the band. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You wear your 35 so well.
Oh, stop it some more. I wish. You should see it from in here, sweetie.
Being with Chicago, when we talk about Blue Eyed Soul, you can talk about Blue Eyed Soul when it comes to Chicago, because Chicago was one of those bands that it didn't matter. People liked and enjoyed their music.
Oh man, it certainly crossed all musical boundaries. And Chicago's music is inclusive of so many genres, you know. I mean, from R&B to jazz to classical to rock and roll. And they really blended, always had a way of blending all those influences, you know.
Yeah, I mean, because I probably had my first or second or third Chicago album, and I was in school in Iowa when Chicago really hit big. And we all talked about Chicago. Of course, we were about 5 hours from Chicago, also. But the band Chicago was, and during that time, that's when music was really at its peak. When and I guess it's kind of hard sometimes for us oldsters to see what's not music today. I mean, it's still music, but you're used to seeing the instruments, you're used to seeing the horn section, you're used to seeing the drummer, you're used to seeing the guitar players, you're used to seeing all of these folks on stage, just like with War, you had these big groups of musicians playing together. And I think that's what made Chicago so phenomenal was because they brought all these different instruments and people together. And the other thing that you noticed about Chicago that I really liked was that they highlighted their musicians, just like give the drummer some, that James Brown used to say.
Yes,
Give the drummer
yes,
some.
yeah.
And you know, they highlighted their musicians.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I always loved that about the band. And it was so sweet. I always got my little, feature too during the course of the show. Yeah.
And I mean,
Very-
I still can recall that happening with Chicago, that they would highlight their musicians, and that's a compliment to whoever's in charge of the band.
yeah.
And it's an unselfish move. And James Brown, if we go back to the godfather of funk, that was his thing. He highlighted his band members.
He sure did. He sure did. I know. Oh man, I have to tell you, Ryan, Chicago actually shared the stage a couple of times with James Brown.
Are you kidding?
And man, I tell you, yeah, I remember a gig in Memphis where it was Booker T and the MGs,
Booker T.
and Chicago and James Brown, man. And I got to stand on the same stage with James Brown and watch, man. And I tell you what, that band was smoking so hard. If you dropped an egg on the stage, it would have fried, man. It was so great. What a great experience.
James Brown, they used to call him the hardest working man in show business.
Yeah.
And he was a perfectionist when it came to his bands too. Kind of like on the order of a Kenny Loggins. Of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
those records reflect that too.
He pushed them band members to be all that they could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then some. And that's the same thing. That's the same kind of reputation that Kenny Loggins has, that he pushes his band members to be all they can be. And then
he sure
some.
does. Yeah. And to be fair, back to Kenny, I don't want to jump all over the place. I'm sorry if I'm doing that.
No, you know what? This is such a great conversation.
Oh, I'm loving it too, Ryan. I'm glad you're enjoying it. But Kenny, to be fair, Kenny is that hard on himself.
That's what I heard. I heard that.
Yeah, he really pushes himself. And, when I left Chicago in 2018, I actually went back and played for a year with Kenny. And that guy, how some artists, they can't help it. It's like a physical thing, the voice. And so as we age, so does our voice. Well, that man has not lost a step. In fact, he's still singing some of the songs in the original key as when he first recorded them, in his 20s and 30s, And man, he is such a perfectionist and so demanding of himself, and he's always growing and always changing and, expanding his musical vocabulary, and I can't say enough about how great he is.
And I think he understood the importance of taking care of himself, and sometimes a lot of the singers don't take care of themselves as well as they should, and as time comes about, it reflects. But when you look at the Kenny Loggins, that he is such a perfectionist. I'm telling you, everyone that I have talked to, and they mention Kenny Loggins, or they've had an experience with Kenny Loggins, says the first thing that you just said about him is that he is hard on himself as not being pleased. He's constantly pushing himself to be more, and that he knows there's more in him. So therefore, if a person does that, you can rest assured everybody around them is going to be in that same realm.
Yeah, that's right. You're going to, you will inherit some of that. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your experience when you were with Firefall.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, Kenny, right about 1981, decided he was going to take a year off and start a family. And so he warned all the guys in his band that, he didn't know when he was going to be coming back from that. Anyway, the bass player that I'd been working with the Kenny Loggins band and I had formed a real great relationship. And he knew some of the guys in Firefall. So we had toured together with Firefall a little bit. So they really liked our George and my playing together. George had done, the Keep the Fire album with This Is It and the early hits with Kenny. And so they asked us if we would like to join the band because Mark Andes and Mike Clark had just left their rhythm section. And so we went and did an album that called Clouds Across the Sun. And they're great musicians, great guys out of Colorado, out of Boulder, Colorado. And there was one hit, actually, a duet with a girl named Lisa Nimzo off that album. Anyway, I ended up going on the road with Firefall, but George Hawkins and Mick Fleetwood from Fleetwood Mac had formed a friendship, and Mick was going to Africa, to Ghana, to do an album with the African drummers there and try to bring African drumming to pop music. And so George went to Ghana so he didn't do the tour with us. But by that time, unfortunately, Firefall was kind of breaking up. They're back together now, but back then, they after that tour, that was sort of the end of Firefall. So.
The other thing that I noticed to show you how everything is so connected, I saw where you played the drums on a Tamara Champlin song.
Yeah.
So go tell. But I'm just saying that.
Right. I wonder how that happened. Yeah. No, she's a great singer.
I have no idea how that would have happened.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
No, I can't imagine that. But I just said, how interesting.
Yeah,
these relationships are.
She's a great singer in her own right and songwriter too.
Yeah, well, in fact, he was giving her all kinds of credit about her songwriting, and he's a funny guy, and I really enjoyed talking to him. Now, you have a relationship with McDonald?
Micheal McDonald, we go way back. Yeah,
I had an opportunity to see Micheal McDonald and Chaka Khan in a concert in the last few years, and it was just so interesting. I mean, that was a combination that Chaka Khan and Micheal McDonald, and Micheal McDonald is such a all these years, his voice still sounds the same.
I know. He's another one, man, that guy.
It's just, I'm listening to my old music with him because, my favorite song is he and Patti LaBelle doing On My Own. And, and he sounds the same there as when he and Chaka did it at the concert that I witnessed, that I'm like, this man, and he's had gray hairs for so long, so you don't know whether he's aging or not.
That's right. I know. He was gray, I think, in his 30s, So or graying.
You don't know Tris, you don't know whether he's aging or not. So
no.
But he has the same voice. And I thought he's still playing that piano and singing, and it was like, I know that I'm older, and I know he has to be older. And, but it's like, for that moment in time, it's like time stood still.
I know what you mean. Yeah, he has been a friend for a long time. I met him back when I was in Honk, and he had just come to L.A. from St. Louis, and we became friends back then. But there again, I knew he was destined for greatness. He went from there to Steely Dan, you know.
Oh, Steely Dan. That was
Started
popular when I
recording
was
this.
in Iowa too. So Steely Dan was.
Yeah, yeah. And then he was asked to join the Doobies, and man, he just transformed them at a time that was really needed too, you know, and gave them so many hits. Wow, man. You know, that first song, actually Kenny Loggins, and he wrote What a Fool Believes together. That was the first song they wrote together, and that won a Grammy, right? Then the next song they wrote together was This Is It.
Yeah,
that won a Grammy. I mean, it was like, you know, what a batting average.
Yeah, they had magic. They had magic, and you know, it's amazing that how a talent can really change the vibe of a whole group, and that's what he did with the Doobie Brothers. With the Doobie Brothers. I mean, he changed that whole vibe. And even when he was with Steely Dan.
I know. Yep.
And you know, something about Michael that, and the thing about it that makes it so interesting about Michael, he stays the same, but he changes things, whatever that means.
I know what you're saying about him, and you know what I have to say about Michael as a person. I have always called him the most reluctant star I've ever met, because he is probably the most humble and down to earth star I've ever known in my life. I mean, he's just like the guy, you know, you talk to, it's like you've known him your whole life. He's so unaffected by it all. I had him come down here to where I live because we've been talking about it since I played in his band there for a while in the early 90s, about coming down and going surfing with me. And so we actually did it. Like about 6 months ago, he came down and I took him out here at Cardiff by the Sea, and man, and we had such a ball. But you know, the thing about him is, you know, you walk into a restaurant, people might look at him like, I think God, he looks like somebody I know, but but he really, you know, he's so low key and does just so not star-like, you know, the way he carries himself. I just love that guy. It's amazing. And aside from the talent, my God.
And it just seems his talent, he comes across such as well as you do, as natural. You know, it doesn't, you know, some talent, you know that they have put a lot into it to get to that point. But then there's those of you who have that, what you call that natural talent, whether you're sweating it out or not, nobody else knows. So, and you come across as like, this is just like walking across the street. This is what I do. And, you know, you're one of those kind of guys with the drums. You know, it's like, this is what I do. I walk across the street. I play the drums.
Well, thank you, Ryan.
Because I was watching some videos of you playing, you know, with back into Chicago and stuff like that, and I'm going like, this guy's a natural. I mean, he's just like, I walk across the street and I play the drums, and that's what I do. Ho ho ho, you know. and then when you look at your resume of all these folks that you played the drums for, is that they see you too. They see, oh, he walks across the street and he plays drums. I'll get him to come over this way. So that's how I see you, Tress. I mean, that's just how I see you. And you know, we talk about the funk music. We talk about blue-eyed soul. We talk about how music affects people. You know, one of the things that cuts across any racial lines is music. You know, no matter where you go, music is a melting pot for people, and it goes right to, as you said, the crevice of a heart. You know, if there's a little spot there, music can touch it and make all the difference in the world with people. And we need more music. And
I agree. Absolutely.
But now, so I got to ask you this. What does, when we talk about here I am having this wonderful opportunity to talk to such a dynamic musician and awesome drummer on Funk Chronicles. So I have to ask the question, what does funk mean to you?
Oh, man. Well, funk for me is where it's the summation and the culmination of all that great music that went before or as funk was developing. I mean, from R&B, the jazz influence, the complexity that can be a part of funk in a band like Tower of Power or Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters. You know, those albums, Thrust and the Headhunters, man, those albums, man, are funkier than a two-day old Band-Aid. You know, that's funk to me. James Brown, man, he changed my world, man. Absolutely, just changed my world. When I first heard Clyde Stubblefield, you know, playing that Inside Out thing, you know, oh man, it's like it turned me on my head, man. And funk to me is one of the highest art forms in music, and be it ultra simple, like you know, geez, man, one of my favorite drummers of all times is Al Jackson, who did everything, you know, with Al Green, you know, in the high records rhythm section. You know, he was also all that stuff with Sam and Dave, and you know, and Booker T and the MGs, and on and on and on. Now he played so simply, but it was so funky. It's almost, it's indescribable, man. It just had that thing, man. It made, you know, put the hump in your back and made you ugly in the face. It felt so good, you know. Oh man, it's really, that's a great question, and I wish I could answer it more clearly. What it means to me, it means the world to me, and for you to today be talking to me from the Funk Chronicles, I'm beyond honored. You know, here I am. You know, loving funk music, but I've never considered myself like a real adept funk player. I've played on some records with some musicians that sure are funky, you know. But I'm just so, I love funk music. And I know that some of the inductees that you already have, in addition to James Brown, the Ohio Players, Bootsy, you know, I mean, all of those people are huge influences on me as well.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and so I'm jumping all over the place. It's just like, this is more than an interview. It's just like Tris and I are having a conversation here, and so I failed to ask you earlier. Give me, I know in an extended career from 1970 on that there's a lot of things, but can you name 3 to 5 just stand out highlights that has happened in your career?
Okay. Well, I'll have to say a big one is playing at Live Aid with Kenny Loggins.
Okay, Live Aid, yes.
So that, as you might have heard or whatever, was brought out recently in that movie about Queen. There was 90,000 people in the stadium in Philadelphia, but with the viewing audience of pay-per-view around the world, it was 1.5 billion people that saw us play. Now that's a lot of people. That's the biggest audience I've ever played with or played for. But I have to say, there's two others, if you don't mind me telling the story.
Go right ahead.
I had just left Chaka Khan and had been asked to join Al Jarreau. And we were going to Europe to do this summer tour, all the great music festivals over there, from North Sea Jazz Festival in Holland to, Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland and all. Anyway, I had left Chaka, and Chaka was scheduled. Al was so popular at that point that he was scheduled to play 2 nights at the Montreux Jazz Festival. And Chaka was going to open for Al on one of those nights. So she knew that I was with Al and was going to be over there. So she didn't bring a drummer, right? And so I got to open for Al with Chaka and then play with Al, right? And then the bass player of Al's band was the great Freddie Washington, And so he had recommended me because he had just done this little album called Rapture with Anita Baker, right? And Warner Brothers, because Anita's also a great scat singer, wanted George Duke to produce and play on a jazz album at the Jazz Festival, Montreux Jazz Festival. And so Freddie had recommended me to be the drummer of that. So the next night, I got to play with Anita Baker doing a jazz album with with George Duke and everything, opening for Al Jarreau. So I had 2 nights of musical heaven. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Wow.
I still pinch myself when I think about it. And then I have to say that one of the greatest experiences of my life, I got to do 5 times. And that was Chicago and Earth, Wind, and Fire playing together.
Ooh.
And the first time we did it was 2004. We took a month, Ryan, in rehearsals, because we did a big portion of the show together, playing each other's songs, alternating, an Earth, Wind, and Fire song and then a Chicago song, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And so they had to write for 6 horns because they have 3 horns themselves, right? And then John Paris, the great drummer, and I had to work out our stuff, and everybody in the band, not to mention, there was 30 people on stage because between the 2 bands, there were so many people,
Oh, wow.
just to keep them running into each other, man. We had to, get that together and choreograph it. But man, that was the most powerful thing. And we did that the first one was in 2004 and the last one was 2016, I think. We did that 5 years, spread out over that time. And man, that has to be one of the musical highlights of my life. Just unbelievable. To experience that and to look at the people's faces, man, in the audience. They just couldn't believe what they were hearing and feeling and seeing. It was like such a spectacle.
Where were they?
Well, we played everywhere, from Madison Square Garden to the Staples Center, in LA. We were all over the U.S. We didn't take it internationally, and I wish we had, because it would have been great to bring that to people all over the world. But yeah, we played all over. I think we did a show, because I know my dear friend Vernon Porter as well.
Vernon, yes, Vernon, yes. Vernon has been a common thread with Chaplin, now you, Tris, now I'm Vernon. I've had the wonderful experience to interview Vernon. So Vernon's a common thread, it seems to be here.
He sure is, man. That guy has a way of connecting with you musically, first and foremost, but a beautiful way of connecting people, too. He's such a beautiful soul. He's one of my best friends in the world. I just love him so much. And we've started a band. We're playing together again.
Oh, my
really
goodness.
Excited about. Yeah.
Vernon has an aura about him that is and I may be wrong, but he comes across as very soothing and extremely deliberate. And so, but he knows his stuff. He really does.
Oh, yeah, he sure does. And man, look out when that guy gets a bass in his hand, too.
But he comes across so peaceful, I guess, you know. I might look at him before his talent, if you just experience him for a brief period, you say, oh, this must be a yoga teacher.
Yeah, right, yeah. Well, I've always thought of him, he's kind of a spiritually advanced soul, you know?
That's a nice way to describe him. Yes, yes, it is. This has just been a wonderful experience with you, Tris. I've enjoyed this so much. It feels like we've just been in a living room and enjoying ourselves with having a music memory walk. And I still want to say that with all your career, that I see you as just the guy that walks across the street and says, I like to play the drums, and this is who I am. And I do need you to express how important it is for us to have the Funk Music Hall of Fame, and what would your words of wisdom be in supporting us in this venture?
Well, I tell you what, funk music is an American treasure, and it's every bit as important as jazz is an American treasure. It's actually the culmination of all of that, influenced by rock and roll, jazz, and so many other things, and R&B. And so I am really, really encouraged and so happy that it's being celebrated in such a way as to have its own Hall of Fame, its own museum, its own place now, as well it should. And I'm so thankful and honored to be asked to speak about it.
Well, I'm so happy too, and that, you know, on behalf of David Webb, our CEO of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center, we are very appreciative of your time today and having the opportunity for you to tell your musical story and share with me. And I wish you the best in all the things that you are going to be doing and that you are doing. And when we get on the other side of this pandemic, I might get a chance to see you walk across the street and do a little drumming.
Oh, Ryan, I want to thank you so much. You just made this so much fun. It was just a blast. Just like you said. It's just like sitting in a living room talking with you.
Thank you, Tris.
Conversation.
I really appreciate it. This is Rhine McLin, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles. Until the next time, keep it funky, funky, funky.
Well, you call. I don't want you to misunderstand me. I just want to say what's on my mind. No need to hit me with an attitude. You know our love was meant to be the kind of love to last forever. And I want you here with me.